Welcome. It's really exciting to be here, and I'm so grateful that you could make it. Today, we are going to talk about how you can get back to running that first 5K with prolapse or other pelvic floor dysfunctions like stress urinary incontinence. So maybe you're peeing your pants when you run, pelvic floor muscle pain, or any kind of hip and back pain that can be associated with a pelvic floor thing. So we're going to cover all of that and help you troubleshoot your runs as well. So again, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And yeah, let's get to this. All right, so just a small little introduction here. My name is Terrellbaldock. You might know me as the Prolapse Coach. I have been working with women for over a decade now, and I've been specializing in pelvic health for over 7 years. So I've worked with everybody from CrossFit Games athletes to Boston Marathon runners, and women who are looking to run. So beginners who have never run a day in their life and they want to get running and navigate their pelvic health stuff. So I've also been published in some major fitness publications like the PTDC, or the Personal Trainers Development Center, run by John Goodman. I've been published on Thrive Global, and I've also contributed some guest posts to Tony Gentlecore as well as Dean Somerset. So if you ever get a chance to check that out, that would be awesome. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty. So first we need to think about the pelvic floor function, or understanding the pelvic floor a little bit better when we get into runs or get into running, because the pelvic floor gets a lot of flack, and sometimes it's not a pelvic floor specific issue, but the pelvic floor is related somehow. So sometimes it can be breathing, sometimes it can be alignment, it could be the pace, it could be duration, it could be tightness of the pelvic floor. So there are many different reasons why you may be experiencing some pelvic floor difficulties when you run. So if you're experiencing any of these, just pop them in the chat. And then we can go from there. So yeah, just wave your hand, say, hey, I'm here. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. If you want to reach out to me via email or on Instagram as well. And I guess I should mention, I also have a Facebook group, Running and Lifting with Prolapse, that you're more than welcome to join. And then there we get a little bit deeper into what pelvic health looks like. But there are so many reasons why we can experience these pelvic floor symptoms when we run. So knowing how your pelvic floor functions in a way that works for you in your body and your life, right? Because pelvic health is very much a lifestyle thing as well. But knowing how it functions is a great start. So like I said, for many women, their pelvic floor muscles are tight, and that's why they experience some leaking. So, or maybe that's where they feel a little bit prolapsy. So they're feeling some heaviness, some bulging, maybe some bloating a little bit down below. And knowing that can help you determine which way to go, whether you need pelvic floor strengthening or pelvic floor relaxing. So if you have an overactive, hypertonic, overly tight pelvic floor, then chances are you're going to want to work on some relaxation techniques so that you can introduce movement back to the pelvic floor, and that the pelvic floor can navigate the impact a little bit better. If you know that you have a weak pelvic floor, you may need to work on strengthening it, and that might be where Kegels come in. Kegels, and then working your way up towards doing more. So maybe some more exercises that you integrate Kegels with to continue building that strength. But again, we want the pelvic floor to be able to relax and contract. And when you're running, that is repetitive impact on the pelvic floor. So chances are, as you run, your pelvic floor is becoming a little bit tighter, right? So these are all things that we can work on so that we can improve your running goals. If you have any questions about how, your pelvic floor is functioning, you need a deep dive, let me know, and then we can set something up and we can dig a little bit deeper and talk a little bit about that more. I do offer 30-minute fitness strategy sessions or fitness and pelvic health strategy sessions. I'll tell you how to get into one of those after we're done here, so that you can, if you wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about what your pelvic health looks like and what it looks like to progress into getting that first 10 or 5K, sorry, then we can definitely talk about that a little bit more. All righty. So first up, and this is probably one of the things that people miss, is that we need strength training. By strength training your entire body, primarily your glutes, we want to focus on that the glute work as well. You take the work away from your pelvic floor. So as I mentioned, when we have a strong bum, strong glutes, it's taking the work or the impact off of the pelvic floor because your glutes are such a large muscle group. Excuse me, need a sip of water there. But by strengthening your entire body, what we're doing is taking that work off of the pelvic floor, right? Strong glutes, strong core, strong spinal rotation. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the stronger that we can be, the better that is for our pelvic floor. And believe it or not, your pelvic floor really likes to be challenged. It likes to be loaded. So don't be afraid of strength training if you're starting out in running and you're concerned about your pelvic health. There are ways that we can work around this and make this work for you. So if you do experience symptoms with strength training, again, feel free to reach out. We can come up with a game plan on how you can get back into a strength training program while navigating those symptoms. But again, strength training is extremely important for your pelvic health and for your runs, right? It helps to protect your joints. It helps you to improve your cadence or your pace. It helps to reduce injuries. It helps even it helps with your pelvic health. So we want to make sure that you're working with a well-rounded approach or a holistic approach so that we're covering all the bases so that you can run and feel brave in your body doing so. All right, so here are lists of exercises to work on. Again, all of these are great for your lower body, but they're also great for building endurance and conditioning as well. So sled pushes are great, especially if you experience symptoms kind of right off the bat. Sled pushes work really well because they take the impact off of the pelvic floor, so you can still get your heart rate up without worrying so much about the leaking or the bulging or things feeling uncomfortable. Walking lunges, if you think about it, running is just a bunch of fast walking lunges. Working on that with the glute development can be really helpful. And then again, we're choosing exercises that also kind of mimic a run. So the walking and reverse lunges are great for that. I love reverse lunges if you experience knee trouble and you need to strengthen the muscles around the knees or to stabilize the knees. those work really well to take the work out of the knee. So both walking lunges and reverse lunges work really well. Hip thrusts, another one, primarily working the glutes. Again, the stronger your glutes can be, the less work that your pelvic floor has to do when it comes to the running itself. Front squats. I love front squats. And what I love about them is that they help build strength in the front part of the pelvic floor. And it also helps to teach the movement within the pelvic floor. So, for example, on the eccentric portion or the lowering phase of the front squat, you're building, that quad strength, right? When you shoot back up, what's happening is that your pelvic floor learns how to automatically turn on so that you don't have to consciously think about it. So it really does help building strength in the anterior part of the pelvic floor. A lot of the times I see my clients just focusing more so on the back side of the body, but we also have to work on the front as well. Okay. Then we've got some. And then we also want to work on things like loaded carries. Loaded carries are going to help with spinal stabilization. It's also going to help with that anti-rotation piece, strengthening your core. And hey, if you ever want to work on pull-ups or deadlifts, and get into the heavier stuff, the heavier strength training, these are going to be really good in even improving the grip strength. And then we've got plyos as well. So, sorry, I missed the jumps. So jumping, box jumps, even step ups where you can get started. You can, if you're symptomatic with step up or box jump, sorry, you can start with step ups. But again, what we're doing is we're really building strength in the motion or the movement so that your body can work towards handling the impact on your pelvic floor. All righty. All righty. So are there any questions here about what kind of strength training to work on? Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat if you're watching this live, or reach out to me later on. Looks like we're good to go. So got the strength training exercise. Okay. So again, when getting back into running, it's really important to first build up the baseline. Okay, so a lot of people that I work with, they just start running right away, maybe after having a baby, maybe post-injury, or they just bear with the symptoms that they're having with their pelvic floor. So whether that's the leaking, whether it's leaking, bulging, feeling pressure down there, we want to build up that baseline first. So again, starting with some strength training, and then with the runs, what I suggest doing is starting with a walk jog program. And so, for example, running for maybe between 15 and 45 seconds, however long you can tolerate, or jogging for that long, sorry. And then maybe taking a 2-minute rest or a walking rest. Okay, so kind of doing it in intervals like that to work up to that tolerance. So basically, and I'm going to actually answer the question here for you. But yeah, so if you're feeling symptomatic, whether it's through strength training or through running, what we want to do is, pull back a little. So basically what happens is that we are looking for what you can tolerate, right? And every woman is different here. And this is how we work on building that baseline. So if, for example, you're strength training or you're running and you get to a certain point in your workout, you're like, this just does not feel very good. that's where, if you're running, you might need to slow down a little bit, maybe change the pace, maybe change the cadence. You know, first look at, your alignment and your breathing, kind of working down the ABCKV list, which is also included in the first email in the first email anyway. Working through those and then deciding to pull back. So if you're strength training, what I always suggest people do is they get to a point where they start feeling uncomfortable, then that would be the point just to dial it back. Again, if you run through, your alignment, breathing, coordination, you try a Kegel and a different variation, then that would be a good time just to lower the weight or try lower the weight first. I generally don't suggest people eliminate exercises if we can find a variation that works. If you get to a point where a variation of that exercise doesn't work, then we may need to take a step back and work on that so that you can work back up to that particular exercise. So let me know if that part makes sense. And if you need clarification, I'm more than happy to help you do that. And then again, rehab exercises for symptoms. So if you're experiencing some symptoms, now typically what I like to do, it does depend on the exercise again. I just try to find a different progression of the exercise as the rehab exercise. Now, everybody's going to start in a different spot. So, for example, if you're early postpartum, let's say, and you want to get back into running, I would start with the rehab exercises first. Or I would start with like core training, pelvic floor muscle training, and then introducing light strength training as we build you back up. And then at that point, working towards your baseline. It's funny, this thing is kind of okay. And then what we want to do is we want to work on general fitness. So this is kind of like all of the above, right? We want that well-rounded fitness program. Again, your pelvic floor needs movement. It likes movement. So working on your general fitness. So this is strength training, running, any kind of active recovery. Mobility is also really important. Something that we talked about just a second ago is the strength training and the glutes. I explained why the glutes are so important with the pelvic floor. Also going to help you handle the impact of the run because, again, this shock absorption, and that's what we're going to talk about next here, but it also helps to absorb some of the pressure that goes on into the pelvic floor when you do run. And then we want to work on the force absorption. So making sure that you're wearing proper shoes is a good one for this. And then, working on the foot strike. So you never want to land directly on your heel. That can cause some pelvic floor stuff to happen. What you want to do is land kind of mid-foot. And that will help to absorb some of that force. And also kind of avoiding slamming down onto the surface that you're running on. A lot of people run with a heavy foot. What we want to do is ease that up a little bit because, again, that impact can be really, that can bring on some symptoms as well. Are there any questions about this? If there are, again, put them in the chat. If you want to reach out to me after this, no problem. More than welcome. We're actually going through this pretty quickly, which is awesome. Give us lots of time for questions and afterwards. Okay. So this is a big one here, troubleshooting symptoms. So if you've watched the training for lady parts in the first email of this series, That's going to be really helpful. It'll help you, or it digs deep into what to do. But some basics here is checking for holding tension. So what this means is that you're clinching like this. You're clinching and you're running with a lot of tension. And this is common for women who already do experience symptoms because they want to keep things on the inside. They become guarded. So this is something to watch for as well when you're strength training or running, is how much tension are you holding? Think tension to task here, okay? So with running, you want to be a little bit looser, a little bit more relaxed so that you can get that T-spine rotation in with the run. If you're running kind of, I guess, if I could demonstrate it, but if you're running without that rotation, again, that's creating tension onto the pelvic floor, and that may be why you are experiencing some symptoms. Again, watch for breathing. Breathing is a big one. So what can happen when we start kind of finding our pace, or when we work towards that steady state or what have you, or when we increase the intensity of the exercise or increase the intensity of the run. So maybe you're going for a sprint, or maybe you want to pick up the pace a little bit. This also can help you with the strength training. But what happens is that a lot of people, when they start getting that fatigued feeling, they start heavily breathing through their mouth. What happens with that is that your pelvic floor isn't able to move because your diaphragm isn't stimulated. So your diaphragm and your pelvic floor work together. And this is why alignment is so important, because if your ribs are stacked up over your hips, then your pelvic floor and your diaphragm are directly over each other. And when you inhale in, everything kind of descends down and then back up, right? So on the exhale, it'll kind of lift back up. And if you just do this now, if you're sitting down or standing up, what have you, you could lay on your back, whatever is will make you most comfortable. What I want you to do is take a deep breath in through your mouth, or not through your mouth. Sorry, got that backwards. A deep breath in through your nose. And we want to fill up that entire upper body. So think about breathing into your belly, your pelvic floor. Think about expanding out through your armpits. Just get that big deep breath in. And then exhale through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw. And then let it all out. Okay, do that 2 or 3 times and take note of what your pelvic floor is doing. If you're doing this correctly, or if your pelvic floor is functioning well, what you should feel on that inhale, again, is your pelvic floor kind of dropping down. On the exhale, you should be feeling it lifting up and in. So let me know in the chat here, if you're doing this live, if you can feel this, if you can feel movement in your pelvic floor when you breathe. Because again, it's really important when you run too, because like I said, what happens is that when you're breathing heavily through your mouth. So if you find yourself here and you're trying to catch your breath, just slow down, take a minute, rest if you need to, get control of your breathing. So inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth. And then once you regain that control of your breathing, start again. A lot of women will give up on their runs because of the breathing. And once we narrow down the breathing, it works a lot better. And it keeps things dry, and I'm a little bit more comfortable in terms of that prolapse. Rotation, I mentioned earlier, we want that T-spine rotation. So when I'm kind of over exaggerating because I'm sitting, but if you're running like this, well, trying to demonstrate, but running like this, there's not a lot of movement in the T-spine, right? We need that spinal rotation for our pelvic floor, or when we run, for our pelvic floor to work well. Because again, that relaxed motion or that relaxed feeling is going to help your pelvic floor move a little bit easier. Alignment, we talked about that. So ribs over hips because of your diaphragm and your pelvic floor. Pace is another one. So changing the pace or the cadence. A nice short stride. It's not on this list here, but your stride. If you're running with a wider stride, that may put a lot of work or extra work on your pelvic floor. So taking shorter steps or a shorter stride. And then the duration. As I mentioned earlier, what you can do to get started is start with the walk, jog, and then work your way up. But changing the duration. So if you can only run for 15 seconds, then that's where you start, and then walk until you recover, and then run again for 15 seconds. And then what you can do is work on bringing that together and taking less recovery in between. And that's what we're really looking for, is that recovery piece getting shorter and shorter. So if you run, so if you can extend that 15 second to 30 seconds to 45 seconds to a minute, you will start to feel that you're not only are you recovering better, but your pelvic floor can navigate things a little bit better. So the key point here is that you have to kind of put in the work to figure out what you need in terms of your pelvic floor so that you can build yourself back up to running. So does this make sense? Is there any questions about this? All righty. Yeah, and again, just pop your questions at any time. We're actually going to wrap up in a few minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards as well. So yeah, we can really kind of get in a little bit deeper after that too. So pessaries. Now I'm not just talking pessaries here. I'm going to kind of run through all of your options in terms of running and navigating leaks, or your prolapse. And I'm a big believer in making sure that I'm not about taking things away from women, especially women with these symptoms. And a lot of women feel like, if they can't do it on their own, then they shouldn't be doing it at all. And this is where pessaries can come in and be really helpful for people. But there's also Impressa, which is kind of like a really skinny tampon that you insert into the vagina. And then what it does is that it puts, it kind of blocks off the urethra so you can't leak that way. But I love these for women who want to get back into running, because what it will do, it's like a sports bra. It's like a sports bra for your vagina. So all you have to do is insert it. And then what it does is that it takes the work off of your it takes the work off of your pelvic floor so that it can move a little bit better. A lot of women with these will use them just temporarily as they're learning, or adapting, as their bodies are adapting to training with this pelvic floor dysfunction or the pelvic floor dysfunction that they're navigating. Some women will use them in their training on an ongoing basis. Other women will use them, maybe during their cycle when they know that they're going to be a little bit more symptomy, or they use them, when they're maybe a little more tired, but they still want to go out for a run. So these are a great way to train your body to navigate the impact. And it's also a great tool for you to keep running for as long as you want, really. And again, there's other options as well, like pads. I'm not opposed to wearing pads if you find that you need that peace of mind or a little bit of protection. But again, these are things that you can work on, and you don't have to live with it forever. Where a lot of women get afraid to do the work is because the symptoms are really uncomfortable. And then it can hit hard emotionally too. So pessaries, wearing a pessary can take that the emotional or the negative emotions out of it, just making you feel a little bit more comfortable, taking it kind of away from the forefront of your mind. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with pessaries. You're not a failure if you use one, or any kind of support if you need it. But again, with pelvic floor muscle training, with strength training, with conditioning, all of these things should improve, or all these things will improve over time. It's just having that well-rounded program to get you there. So if you have any questions, then yeah, please feel free to reach out. I'm really excited about this program because, like I said, working with female athletes, running is a part of it, and running is a lot of what I work with my clients. And I'm really excited to get more women running because the health benefits, really outweigh the risks. So if there's a way that we can make your training work for you, then that's what we're going to do. And not to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty darn good at it. So yeah, just reach out if you have any questions or you want to learn more about running for lady parts. So thank you so much for joining me today.